Um, don't mind me looking real sleepy. I'm very sleepy. So I said to myself and then to the world lately, I mean recently, sorry, that you got to give yourself the chance to be understood. Um, and you do that by being willing to explain yourself. Not always, and not having to like sit there and prove yourself, but you can't expect people to understand you if you've never explained yourself. Um, you know, that's just, and I think a lot of times we avoid explaining ourselves because we don't fully understand ourselves. But then we project that we want others to understand us when ultimately we really just want other people to do the work we're not willing to do for ourselves. Um, or to, that we don't trust, we doubt ourselves and we don't trust that we can do it. So we want somebody else to show us how it's done, I guess, more or less, right? It's not so nefarious. It really does come from a place of victimization of self, um, which ultimately is all victimization. Um, others can attack you, assault you, attempt to hurt you in any number of ways, but it's really up to us to become victimized by those things. Um, and we do victimize ourselves. And, you know, after I said that, I'm always saying shit that like then I'm having to hold myself accountable to. That's why I say it. I don't often say things, because I've got it all together and am the perfect example of the ideas, that I have, or the truths that I come to understand, or the reality uh, that I live in. I'm not always the most responsible about it, but saying things out loud, especially like putting them out on public platforms, is a form of accountability for me. Um, I can't be somebody that's sitting there preaching certain things and then not actively expressing those things in my life, right? So, um, something that I've been thinking a lot about, and I realize how much I do this, how much I expect others to do what I'm not actively doing myself. And I'll judge others about it. You know what I mean? I'll feel some type of way because I'll think I'm doing everything away. Um, because I tell myself I am, I suppose. But when I really stop to think about it, I realize that, like, oh, I suppose I really haven't fully explained myself. Or even when I have, I can look back and be like, that wasn't what I was actually trying to convey. Um, and, I can't hold it against others when my communication is so amiss. Um, Especially my communications of self. How am I going to expect somebody else meet my needs, um, or be able to even prove that they care? I do think a lot of it's a defense mechanism almost. I learned how to not convey myself truthfully. I learned how to dismiss myself. I learned how to uh, project, you know, my insecurities elsewhere. I learned how to like play a role, um, and all of those things. Not only, you know, um, not devalued me, but kind of like, what's the word I'm thinking of? Like, those things limited me and hurt me in the end, but they also limited and hurt others from being able to be better for me, because of the very deep issues and traumas that I have with personal relationships because of my family. I keep everyone at arm's length, everyone, uh, even in my most intimate personal relationships. And it's a protection method, 100%. And it has protected me and it's served me well. But at the same time, it's also, again, limited me, especially from being able to express myself honestly, and vulnerably, but also to be able to receive people that same way. Um, and I don't want that ultimately. Ultimately, I want to be able to be free, and I want other people to be able to be free with me. So those behaviors don't really have a role in my life as much as they still just have a place. And I'm working out that space so that I can kind of release those things, clear it from what isn't meant for me, and really take on the truth and the reality that I want, which it just being genuine. I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm not even trying to be great. I'm not. I don't care if people like me. I really don't. I trained myself to believe that I did. I compromised myself constantly my entire life, but it was a protection method, and it was because the people that were closest to me, like my family and the partners that I ended up with, were manipulative, to the point that I had to compromise myself in order to have those relationships. But I have come an extremely far way to be quite happy alone, to the point where like it's very silly for me to continue in that behavior. I don't need that validation. It's just become a habit. Um, and so I try to pay attention to the way that I communicate, and the way that I convey myself, and the way that I project myself onto the others, and the way I feel about myself in general, or the things I tell myself, even to myself. Yeah, because I don't. I need to be held accountable to those things, and I want to change those things, and I need to adapt properly to free myself from those limiting mindsets and feelings and shit. So in that, trying to express myself, uh, people have some wild opinions and concepts of me, and I have done that to myself by being how I am, and again by not explaining myself. By not explaining myself, I have allowed so many people just to like believe whatever you want. Okay, and I found it slightly entertaining, to be honest. It's actually amazed me what people think I'm capable of. But at the same time, because of those things and because I made those allowances, I have become quite capable of many things. And I think I kind of always was, but I was self limited. And it's like the freer I become, the more dangerous I seem. Uh, because I am more capable of more things, not just the good, but also the bad. So I get the importance of one. I get why I've continued to be on the defense and continue to project um, a reality that isn't quite genuine, um, because I care very much about the message of my existence, about the way that my behaviors and choices are conveyed and received. But like that's all. I've been far too controlling about those things, to the point where like ultimately the only thing those things can say about me isn't what a great person I am. It's just that I've been able to control the narrative quite well, and that's not the type of person I want to be. I don't want to control the narrative. I don't. That's not the type of writer that I am. That's not the type of speaker that I am. Uh, I am an artist. What I want to be able to do is use the skill of being able to communicate my narrative, not control my narrative, right? And I would say that for a time, controlling my narrative has been served me. And maybe there's times, even still in the future, where it needs to happen certain ways. It's a good skill to learn to a degree, I suppose, but ultimately it's important to not constantly be trying to control the narrative, but to rather just be able to express it, um, your reality, as genuinely as possible, and to let it speak for itself. In those ways, I can still write my story. I can still speak my experiences, without controlling the narrative, right? And uh, that sense of control, as I'm trying to control things, it's coming from fear. It's coming from fear. I don't want to give power to fear. So I have to not be giving power to those things. I have to be holding myself accountable. Otherwise, I'm continuing to support unsustainable systems that go in direct opposition with everything that I live my life for. And like, not just what I say, but like I have made serious sacrifices. I have compromised myself. I've gone through incredible experiences that like mean practically nothing if I don't have integrity. Um, And being as genuine as possible, that doesn't mean that I'm perfect. That doesn't mean that I'm right on top of all my shit and being completely true. I'm likely always going to be slightly amiss. Uh, I think that the state of being human kind of always keeps you uh, slightly adjacent to the truest reality of yourself. Um, I exist as a human, but I am beyond that, and it's important for me to be able to have come home to that real aspect of who I am, but like it's also important for me to integrate and balance the relationship between the fullness of who I am and the reality of who I am as a human being. And both of those things take balance when it comes, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So that's what I'm trying to do. But so in all of this, I've become aware that how do I want to put this? I've been supporting systems I don't actually care to support, and I've been validating realities that aren't genuine, and mostly just because I haven't conveyed myself properly. It is, I'm an artist. I'm an entertainer by naturally. Like that just comes naturally. That was always part of our lives growing up. Um, it is part of who I am. So as I've, grown into kind of moving in the direction of entertainment based careers, I have lost myself in ways, which I think is a common thing for artists, especially that end up on a public platform or in the public eye in any sort of way. It's not that everything that I posted isn't coming from a genuine place, but that the more genuine place is that I don't so often, more often than not, those things, it depends on how it comes about. If I'm actively creating, those things are coming from me, but so often those things are a reflection of the ways I'm like coping with my experience, the ways I'm working out my self doubt, the ways I'm still seeking external validation. Um, and that isn't my most genuine aspect. Ultimately, that isn't a reflection of my highest self or my greatest balance of person, and so that's not the end goal. It isn't to become an entertainer. It isn't to become an influencer. It isn't to become rich in any way or famous in any way. Those aren't goals. Me being an entertainer, me having any social influence, if I have any, me, I mean, I do, we all do. Me like being able to convey myself artistically, musically, through comedy, through sexuality, in my spirituality, those things aren't me, right? They're a reflection of me. They're tools I use to express myself. They're an expression of self. They're not myself. They are an expression of self. Um, and ultimately, as much as I've moved in the direction of, I mean, that's why I lost out on so much of my art, is because I really have tried to be pushing it into this concept of acceptable career, of some form of social and economical sustainability that I don't even truly agree with. Um, and it's become limiting, and it always was truly, and it's not the best reflection of myself. Now, as I grow and develop, those things will become a better reflection of me as I move away from the being able to personally identify with those more negative and lower vibrational aspects of those experiences. Um, as long as I'm still quite personally identified by them, then I'm also like running from them or trying to manipulate them or again trying to control them in a way that isn't truly reflective of me. Um, so yeah, the further away from those things I end up moving after expressing them is the more accurate reflection. But like I like okay, when it comes to entertainment, for instance, art, entertainment, all of these are things that I've done. These are things that come naturally for me. These are things that I deeply care about, but not because like it's just so weird being in the comedy scene. Like everybody cares so much about like what Joe Rogan thinks or what Tony Hinchcliffe thinks or what the crowd thinks or what the manager of this bar thinks or like what the people on Instagram or TikTok think. And like that's not art, that's not life, that's not love, that's not genuine comedy, that's not an expression of anything genuine. That's keeping up with the Joneses. And like we do that in so many different ways, and I also have catered to that to the point where like the truth of why I am the way I am and why I've done these things has completely been lost to social media influence. And I hate that, especially because I myself have like imprisoned myself to certain concepts that I don't even agree with. Um, I have always wanted to be a self sustainable person. That's always been my ultimate goal. That's it. Not being rich, not being famous, not uh, having a really nice house, not having a solid family, not having a perfect partner, not having, you know, it's literally just been able to be self sustainable, whatever that means. But ultimately, and figuring that out, but ultimately to be able to provide for myself the things that I need, the things that I use, the things I consume, the things that I want, you know, um, and for whatever that looks like, and to make it and to balance it out. And as I've gone through this process, and as I've actively worked on it, and as I've matured and just gone through so many experiences and cultivated it, um, I've come to the point where like I'm capable of acquiring those things. I'm capable of establishing that reality for myself, yet have not fully. Um, yeah, I'm still just clinging to a lot of weird social stuff and you know these concepts that like these were the things that were going to make me happy. These were It's a weird one because the position I'm in now is slightly different even. But like I don't want a big comfortable house or five big comfortable houses I can travel to all across the world, like while I am all over the internet. And like I mean, listen, there's aspects of being able to travel, being able to engage with all different types of people. um there's so many it's such a hard balance. I know a lot of well-to-do people, well-to-do as far as like especially in the entertainment industry, all across the board, all types of entertainers, all types of even like chefs, like not just different types of artists, but like yeah, people in just the creative industry in general. Been cultivating and networking for years to the point where like if I if I were to take a step in that direction, like I have so many different people that like I could go travel the world. I could go stay with them for a time. I could eat good food, have good sex, like listen to good music, see see the world. That's something obviously, I mean that's everybody's dream. You know what I mean? Like yeah, that shit hits. But it's really not I've what my end goal is. It's not where my heart is. And it never has been. And like it's hard because like most people in my position, like if they worked so hard to get into this position, like those are the exact rewards and benefits that they would be like absolutely just sucking up. Like, yeah, give it all to me. I want it all, and I want to live that way, and I want those things. And I've done those things in different ways where like I mean those experiences have changed my life, and they've made my life so much fuller and so much brighter and more colorful and better in so many different, I mean they've helped me so exponentially. I'm not trying to shit on those experiences by any means, or like the opportunity for those experiences. But I really don't think that those are the things that ultimately make me happy. I believe that I could live the next 25, 30 years living it up lavishly, making a name for myself, becoming, uh, by average standards, what's the word? Like, what? I can't think. Like, building a legacy for myself, essentially, right? In that way, like, by the average standard of what a legacy is. Um, I could do that, and I just don't have a desire to, and it's hard to determine how much of that is just these self-limiting beliefs, um, me trying to still please other people, and other concepts that I don't even agree with, and um, me falling into these concepts of like, well, is that just going to make me happy because that's what makes everybody else happy? Because I've never really been the type of person that is happy with what makes everybody else happy. In fact, those things have always kind of like weirdly, deeply hurt me. Well, so many of the things that weirdly, deeply hurt everybody else are the things that like genuinely cultivate deep senses of joy and appreciation in me. So it might just be that I'm fucked up and a little bit ass backwards. And so that's what I'm trying to work out too, because I don't want I've I was cursed my entire life, by pretty much anybody that got close. And I don't want to continue carrying those things. And I know that so much of those curses were just not wanting me to be able to get to a point of being able to receive the greatest abundance in the universe, the peace, the joy that is in all of my experiences, and the grand abundance that the universe would have for me. So I do not want to reject those things at all. But at the same time, I just don't look at things that way. I don't feel like being handed my maybe I've just worked so hard for so long that that's become its own reward, and now like it's not even about like the paycheck, right? It's not about like the things I can receive out of it. It's almost like the work itself is just the most rewarding thing. So like I don't plan to stop. I just want to keep working at it. And I think that there is a bit of that like that I struggle with because there's a narcissistic intellectualism that I have, an ego tied into that intellectualism that like, you know, that the immaterialism, the stoicism, there's an ego attached to it that like is stroked by being taken that higher ground. And like in my own experience, I've, like I said, the times that I have let myself kind of just be free to experience things, I've ended up much better for those experiences than when I was trying to be so stoic and trying to do the right thing. The right thing doesn't exist, or at least never has for me. And being free is the only thing that exists for me, and then the illusion that there's anything else. Um, and my whole life has just been trying to break from that disillusionment. Um, hold on, sorry. I had a slight ringing, just a very quiet, subtle, for a split second, ringing in my right ear, and was told essentially in my head. It's not like there's a voice. It's not an actual voice. It's just like these strong feelings to wait. And as I did, a helicopter fell on the grill behind me, made a sound, and then the wind picked up. And those things always remind me to accept change. Well, the the sound was a confirmation, and the blowing of the wind reminds me that change is inevitable. And it's really just going with it, right? It's about going with things. I I don't think too much. Everybody else might disagree. I truly don't think most people think enough. And I think as far as I'm concerned, I don't think most people need to think as much as I think. But for me, it is I don't think it's too much. I think it's I don't how dare you tell me what's too much for me. Especially when it comes to what I'm doing in my own self. Um I don't know fully, but like that I mean, yeah, I don't think I think too much, but I definitely think a lot. And it is important for me to be able to it's fine, but to also not let that become its own limiting factor, right? I mean, I used to because I grew up Christian and fucking brainwashed so hardcore. It At 34, I'm still trying to shake that savior complex that was built into me. Um, and that's like a big thing for me is because I do know that that's like a lot of my struggle is that there's this part of me that was trained into me that I still identify with that's like it's your responsibility to make the world a better place. It's my responsibility to handle my reality and my experience as best as I can. Even then, my responsibility there isn't a responsibility. It's only unto myself. Like the people that choose to, you know, get into drugs and stay on drugs or stay depressed, like and it is a choice. um as much as it doesn't feel like it, as much like again, as much as we've been assaulted, we've been abused, we've been neglected, we've been hurt, we've been broken, we've been fucked up by other people, it's still a choice as to what we do with those things. It is a choice, and I can say that because I have made those choices and watched myself go from somebody who was supposed to be one way to somebody who is now a completely different way. And not just a completely different way, the exact way that I intended to be because I put that work in. There is not a single way I couldn't be if I intend and put the work in. Anything I put my mind to is possible, which is why when I put my mind into the concept that people doing certain things could ever take me out of myself or read or define my existence for me, well, then I'm just validating those things. I'm the one creating that. I'm the one manifesting that. That's not the true reality. Um, when I try to remind myself of those things, but it does get hard. It gets, it just gets complex. And I don't blame people. I don't blame people. I try not to. When I see that somebody is capable of more and is actively trying to just evade responsibility, I tend to feel a type of way. But generally speaking, I do look at things from a broader perspective of empathy where, like, I don't, I'm not you. I'm not you. I don't know what's going on in your head. I don't know what's going on in your heart. And it's not for me. It's for you. I just hope for the best for people. I just hope that they know themselves, that they do what they need to do to know themselves, that they do what they need to do for what they deserve. These bees are so cute. They're like, well, this is a wasp, but the bees around here I keep seeing are like carrying leaves and stuff like that, not just pollen. They're like, maybe I just haven't paid enough attention. I love bees and I'm always spending time with bees, but like, this is the third, well, this is a wasp, but this is the third bee I've seen that's carrying some type of leaf thing. I don't know, it's kind of cute. Um, there is no definitive what you're supposed to be doing with your life. You have that choice. You get to make that choice. You get to decide for yourself whatever that is. I don't care what your government says. I don't care what your parents say. I don't care what your partners say. I don't care what the whole of society says. You are the master of your own reality. You get to make those choices. You can do whatever, even if it kills you. You still have the choice to respond to things the way that you respond to things. There's been times that I have been had no money, had no food, no resources, no support, nobody to reach out to, absolutely lost in a really fucked up situation where I'm being threatened. I'm, you know, already insecure. I'm, in potentially hazardous or risky situations or dangerous situations. And my response to all of that was still my choice. Could I get out of those things all the time? No, no. There has been times that I have been stuck in those situations. But even with the heaviest chains wrapped around every part of me, my capacity to let myself and my heart and my mind be broken by those things has been within me. And as soon as I stopped giving power to my capacity to be broken by external experience, uh, I I took my power back. I still, and it depends on the experience. They'll try. The experiences will try their hardest to take you out of your element, to remove you from your own godhood. But that's your only responsibility. And even then, if you don't take responsibility for it, you're the only one that hurts for it. You know what I mean? Like, the universe is so grand and so big that I have to imagine that, like, all of those who die without stepping into their godhood were essentially, I mean, they're just, that's part of the balance. It's just part of the balance. I don't believe that any of it's innately evil. I think that even if everything goes to shit, it's really not as bad as we like to believe that it is. I think our emotions, it's like watching a movie, right? Where, like, our emotions, like, can be so big and we can feel them so deeply, but they don't actually mean anything. I can watch a movie and absolutely weep, feel so deeply for these people, feel like this is somebody who I've spent my life with and I understand them, and now I'm watching them go through these things and it is heart-wrenching. And then the movie's over and it's done and that's it. Like, it's not something you know you do carry it with you, though, at the same time. Like, that's the cool thing about it. But, like, it really, things just aren't as personal as we like to take them. And I believe that the only reason we personalize things is because, as a singular God experiencing itself through individual aspects, the individual aspect becoming aware of itself as an individual aspect has no choice but to receive things personally. And it's only in remembering our ultimate universal godhood that we can step out of that personability, that everything is so personal, that everything is all against us, and then is when things become for us, not just to us. Um, so those things are important to me. I mean, I would love to see everybody get to that point, but at the same time, like, that's idealism that is not, um there's nothing in reality that would validate that level of idealism. It's just a feeling. It's just a feeling. Yeah, I would hope that for people. I want that for people. I would love to see people, like, living their best lives, but that's not how the world works. That's not what's meant for everyone. Um that's not how things work. Everything is just as good as it is bad, and it's all a matter of perception. It really is. It really, really is. And, like, that's why animals, like, they're a little better. They're a little less removed from their own godhood, right? Because they don't have some animals. I don't know. Who am I to judge? Because I actually have. If I sin, I swear to God, I've watched my dogs sin as well. There's been. I mean, my dogs have made choices that serve them, even though they know that it wasn't what they were supposed to do. It hurts somebody else. That's just what they do. Is it sinful? No, it's not sinful for us to do it either. We just feel ways. That's it, and our feelings don't fucking matter. That's really what it is, too. That's, like, the whole thing. That's all this morality and religion and stuff, like it was important for us to use it for a time to come to a point of being able to understand our sentience, but like it was just a tool to be able to understand ourselves. In reality, none of that really matters or truly actually exists. And it really doesn't. It doesn't. And you can make it exist. We manifest those things for ourselves, but that's because our feelings are very valid. Like if you really wanted to, you know, watch Beauty and the Beast and feel bad for Gaston because you never learned his life, but maybe he was assaulted by his dad. Maybe there's a reason he's that way, and then you just carry that for the rest of your life, and you always feel some type of way about like that's your right. That's your freedom. You have the freedom to literally do anything in the world, anything at all, and like, I mean, maybe that's much easier for me to say as an adult in America, especially as a white woman. But at the same time, you know, I've been raped by multiple people and assaulted by multiple people throughout my life. Uh, I've been lived out of my car, been absolutely poor. I've starved, uh, lots of times. I, I've, I've, I've had, I've dealt with things that like other people haven't. And like, that's the balance of things. You know what I mean? It's not just like my life has been totally great and stuff like that to be able to say these things. I have actually done the work to be able to come to a place of recognizing my value, my worth, my power, um, and the illusion that would try to keep me from it. And if somebody doesn't want to be awakened to that, I mean, that's on them. I used to care so much. It just seemed like there were people that like, if they would just know, if they just heard it the right way or saw it the right way, or if it was just brought to them the right way or through the right person, then they would come to that. And that's kind of how I always looked at things. But honestly, that in of itself is an idealism, to the point where people that had come into my life to teach me extremely grand lessons became idols in my heart. And that was wrong, for the fact that they were just tools the universe was using for that. The universe could have used anyone or anything. It just used that. And that was because of where I was in that time and place. Like, if I had made a single different choice and been in a different time or place, the universe would have used something else to bring me to that point, you know? Or it wouldn't have. And then I wouldn't get to that point. Like, none of it's, and that's the thing too, like the ego tied into being like, oh, well, I learned from this lesson, this thing, and that brings me into some sort of godhood. No, godhood is just being. It's how we truly are. And it was something that struck me the other day, because the way somebody had put it, they were referencing when Satan, the serpent, had been communicating to Adam and Eve, and the lie that Satan had used was, "Are ye not gods?" And the way that it had been taught to me growing up was that it was as if Satan was like, "But aren't you guys gods? Like, you could be like gods if you would just do this thing." But what was really happening was that there was a recognition of the innate state that we exist within, which is to be completely connected with God, completely equal with God, walking with God, being a part of God, being a whole part of this grand existence and in perfect balance with it, and outside of sin. And the sin was to question, are we not gods? You know what I mean? Like, that was the sin, to question, are we not gods? Like, and then to start feeling like, oh, maybe we aren't gods. Maybe we're sick, evil, little selfish, nasty little things that deserve to be covered, and we're shameful, and now we have guilt. The guilt was the immediately, as soon as Adam and Eve had sinned, they covered themselves. They covered themselves because they saw their nakedness and they were ashamed. That is not godly. That is not part of their godhood. Their godhood was to be able to walk butt naked in a with God all day, completely connected with God, completely connected with nature, completely inherent with all things, not having to reproduce outside of themselves, only actively receiving all of the abundance of the universe and just caring for it, all of the abundance in the universe. And that was just in perfect balance. The issue did come when they questioned if they were gods and then made a choice to do something to put themselves into a godhood rather than just receiving their innate godhood. That was the whole issue. You don't have to eat of a fruit in order to know God. or in order to know yourself as God. You are God. Why are you making these discrepancies? Why are you allowing that division? Satan wasn't the one that created that division. Satan communicated the concept that there could be a division, and we bought into it. That's something we all did. Those are all just metaphors for what we do constantly all the time, right? Um, and that's the issue. I have a lot of different theories when it comes down to those things that I could get into about, you know, well, I mean, even that's part of it. The reason I haven't had children is because I really do feel in my heart that like that's not. I still can't get over the feeling that having children is j- just a way to try to play God. It's just an egotistical thing. I don't. I You have to create little versions of yourself. I think that parenting, raising children as part of a community, I think that is natural and good. But at the same time, I don't think that producing children is necessarily. I just don't think that it's what we're supposed. Okay, I know this is getting out there. When I was in a super abusive relationship in Baltimore, I was like being psychologically operated on. It was super abusive, but it actually was very good for me. It was a gift. I'm very thankful for the experience. I digress. Um, while I was there, the the dude that was uh, exposing me to all these different things had made me watch this documentary, a weird Christian conspiracy documentary about how the low hanging fruit, the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of the good and evil, was actually the orgasm. And that prior to the orgasm, we participated in tantric sex. We participated in uh, a proper alignment with energetically with our experience. But the second that we took it that step too far, the second that we determined that we needed to feel that thing, that we needed that thing in order to know ourselves fully, that was the issue. That wasn't actually part of ourselves. What that did was created a death. The second that you come, suddenly like the porn you were just watching is gross. The second you come, like this girl that you didn't really know that you're just banging is gross. The second that you come, like you feel kind of weird about yourself. That's not always true. Sometimes I feel great about myself after, right? But like there's an inherent part of us that feels some type of way, especially like the concept, like, and it's psychological, but like if you're not reproducing, if you're constantly coming without any sort of reproduction, it does create a weird feeling in oneself. But I don't think any of that, I think that has become natural, but I think it's ultimately because of how removed we are from our godhood. um I think that if we were truly connected with our godhood, we wouldn't need to know the end in order to enjoy the journey. And that is the point of tantric sex, and that is what most of our entire society has been so completely removed from. We don't even know how to engage in sex tantrically. We can't just enjoy each other. We don't just enjoy our reality. Everything has to be a means to an end. Everything has to like cultivate into some other thing. Everything has to become something else. And like that is the cycle of death that we created. That cycle of evolution where like everything has to die in order for everything else to be born. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that before. The second that we determined that like we wanted to feel a type of way, and that like, oh, but it's so intense and we just want to feel that intensity, well, that was the thing too. It created an initial sense of death for the fact that like it feels like I mean, at least for me, like an orgasm is like one of the most intense chemical reactions you could experience. For me, it definitely is. And yet it doesn't make you a god. It doesn't change you. It doesn't do anything different. So I think that was like the issue too. There's this feeling that like, oh, this thing is gonna do something. Well, all it does is at best create a baby. But the thing about that was that like, so in this documentary, like Adam and Eve were able to engage. They were able to eat from every tree. They were able to engage in everything. They just weren't supposed to do that. And when they did, it created reproduction. And the issue with that was that they then themselves had become their own gods, their own creators. The concept was we can create for ourselves a reality greater than the one that God has given us. Before Adam and Eve were able to just be provided for, the universe provides for the individual. It truly does. Like, as soon as I separated myself from codependency, I have been nothing but cared for. Yes, I have had times of struggle, but that's also because of my codependent tendencies and behaviors and the things that I was habits. Um, every time that I have been able to release myself from codependency, I have been absolutely abundant within the universe. Like, I haven't had to ask for a thing. I've been fed, I've been clothed, I've been housed, and not just by other people. Like, I've been the the world takes care of itself and takes care of its own when we take onto ourselves the concept of our own and then create for ourselves what our own is rather than just receiving the abundance of the universe. When we decide that we need to have kids in order to have something of our own family, our own it just it that's why then there was pain in childbirth that didn't exist before we had to have kids. Oh, okay, you want to be your own god? Well, then you're going to have to experience how the suffering that it is to be pregnant and be able to give birth and have and raise a child. It's gonna fucking suck. You did that to yourself. The same thing as now you're gonna have to provide for your children. The universe was already providing for us. It was only when we determined that we needed to have children that suddenly we needed to grow our own food and hunt and kill, because those things came to us prior. We didn't need that. We could sustain ourselves. But as soon as we had, now we need the energy because now we're taking care of these kids. The kids take a life force straight out of us. So, like, we're suddenly aging. We're suddenly like, there's this concept of like, oh, now you have kids, and then the kids grow and develop. And then, there's this whole thing like we could have lived forever, but we chose to create a limited system. I know this was a crazy documentary, and at the time, I mocked it. I did. And dude didn't like that I did that and was very adamant to, um, you know, teach me otherwise psychologically. But I mean, now I have come to that point where, yeah, I mean, it's not, I mean, I still masturbate a lot, a little bit compulsively sometimes, depending on the state of my celibacy. I still struggle when it comes to that.